Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. This week with us, we have Yufei Tao joining us from Syntec Limited as their senior SIP engineer and longtime SIP and voice over IP expert, friend of the open source community. Thank you for joining us today, Yufei.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Welcome to ClueCon Weekly. So, would you like to give us a quick introduction about yourself so we can get started?
Yeah, myself, I had my first degree, bachelor's degree back in Beijing. Beijing, well, it's called BeiHang University now. And then I came to the UK, did a PhD in University of York, and that was in analog filter design, which doesn't have too much to do with what I'm doing now.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, but it was a good training for the research project. How do you solve the problem in a disciplined way? I think I learned quite a lot in the soft skills rather than exactly the knowledge. That was a good training, and then I spent a few years in York University again, doing research on 3D binaural 3D sound
Wow.
analysis and synthesis. Yeah, some acoustics. So that was about 4 years as a postdoc researcher, and then I got a opportunity to continue with the academic world, but I thought it kind of I see roughly what it is like, and then it's not
Mhm.
quite what my character suits. So I moved on to industry and did a few years in imagination technologies, doing some audio codecs, and then it was my start with the VoIP world. Um, I spent 8 years programming in C, embedded C, on
Wow.
the set-top box for a SIP stack on the client side. And then I started to do some SIP server work to couple with our SIP client to be sold as a package. And back then, I did open SIPs first, and then we had some problems, and then struggled a little bit, and then we discovered, oh, there's a Kamailio in there, which
Yeah.
does a pretty much similar thing, and then it didn't have the problem I was seeing. So I started with Kamailio ever since. Yeah, so that's that. And then after 8 years, I moved down south from York, Yorkshire, uh, and then started to work on mainly the secure telephony payment. So, for example, if you want to pay for your holidays and whatever, the agent would ask you to read out your card data. And then the 3 digits sensitive digits at the back as well, which could lead some to some fraud. And
Sure.
we have some product, yeah. So basically, we filter out all the sensitive card data information so that they never reach the contact center, and then we submit to the payment gateways. So we just basically descope the contact center from the sensitive data PCI requirements, which is quite a lot to comply with. Yeah, so basically, I've been working with in this field for the past how many years? Quite a few years now.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, the codec and the real time stuff is really interesting, and it's not something that many people have experience with. I've done some work with stereo audio and that, spatial positioning of sources in a conference and all of that part. I did the application side, but the server side was very fascinating to me because I didn't know much about it. It's very very interesting. Well, that's a lot of skills. Well, then so this, Cooking Weekly is generally a show about open source. So I always lead with the first question: which are your favorite open source packages? What do you work with the most?
The my favorite open source software, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have to say it's Kamailio and RTP engine because that's what I use most. I also use like Asterisk and FreeSwitch a little bit, but far less than what I have worked on Kamailio and RTP engine. The good thing about these things are they are, first of all, the throughput is really high and is very robust. Small requirement on the resource. It's very just like almost like a magic. It's so reliable. And then I was sometimes thinking at some stage during my career with Kamailio and RDP engine, I was thinking, oh, if there's something not working, I find with my Kamailio project, it must be me most of the
Mhm.
time. Yeah, because it's so robust. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so yeah,
that's
that's
nice.
really good, and it allows you a lot of low-level control, so you know exactly what you're doing. Some other software which give you like a high-level control, but without the low level, uh, you you basically read the document and the example say, that's how you do a code diversion, that's how you do a whatever. And but for Kamailio and RDP engine, you do it manually and you know what exactly is going to happen.
For sure, yeah, you're right. It's once you get the hang of it, it is very simple to build complicated applications, and that means it's really useful. That means the software is really useful for sure.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. And well, what about Friswitch? You've used Friswitch a bit. What are your opinion? I mean, I'm just asking because I'm part of the Friswitch project. Many friends are using Friswitch. So, what do you like about Friswitch? If there's anything in particular you can say.
It's very good. In the whole system, it's very the throughput is good, uh, and is offering a lot of functionalities. You can build many fantastic applications using it, and we use that. I use that quite a lot in my testing because our core product is Commodity RDB engine stuff. But I use that for building my test platform. So you can send the calls to your test target, and then you know that's correct.
That's not the first time I hear using Friswitch for testing. It's probably well suited. Yeah, so Friswitch, as you know, understands a lot of things. It's able to talk to a lot of codecs and systems, and there's a lot of application you can use during calls. So platform to make it call to a target and see what happens. You're right.
Yes, yeah, it's
Good.
used
So
as a
being having
reference.
been Yeah, having been in the open source community for so long, this is another question I very often ask because I've managed a Ruby framework for a long time, and I have many friends who do this. What do you think is the current state of the open source community in general, and if there's anything that should be changed or has changed since a few years? I have my own opinions, but I won't tell you before you tell me yours.
Yeah, okay. You tell me your answer later. Yeah. I think my opinion is um, we see some of the big open source platforms. They are having some business models, like they fall into categories. Like some of them with company backing, and some of them are without. Basically, the main developers, they do a lot of consulting work on their own, and then they use that to sponsor development of the open source projects, and then they provide training and some conferences and some activities like that, and then that's one kind of business model. But I think especially in the past few years, the pandemic obviously changed a lot of things. So like offline training or conference, a lot of them are canceled. So it's not very good for the business model. They do suffer somewhat because of this. So I'm just thinking, is there any way that we, as user and the people who benefit from using the open source project, can actually help to make it better. I mean, it's like using the open source software. You can't just say that's free. Someone is paying for it.
Yeah.
Someone is earning the money and sponsoring themselves to do the work. So if you have any ideas or anybody has some ideas, we should talk about it and see what can be done.
Yeah, so first of all, I feel like, I don't know if you agree, but I feel like in general, the number and quality of contributions to people to open source projects from people has gone down considerably in the last few years. I don't know why, but most open source projects I work with and use every day seem to have a core of 3, 4, 5 contributors who have 90%, 95% of the commits and a few patches here and there. Some of them have always been like that. Some of them change very much. Another platform I use very often is Ruby on Rails, which is not related to voice over IP, but it's a common web framework. And
Yeah.
that went from 20 to 30 active committers at any given time to essentially 5 people right now
Oh,
in 4 or 5 years, which doesn't mean they're not active. The new versions are great. It's just that those people are doing the majority of work because Rails powers few of the the largest apps, GitHub, all the Basecamp stuff. There's a lot that's built. A Shopify is built on Rails, but still, even with that much success, eventually people just, I don't know, stop contributing. I don't know don't know the reason why. The other thing is, how do we get big companies to contribute to projects? Which is probably the
exactly.
main question. It's like, how do you
Exactly.
fix that?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's. I mean, we all tried bug bounties. We all tried all kind of things, but eventually they just fix their own problem themselves and not don't even give it back to you. So I don't know if there's any right answer. What's your opinion? Like, how do we get large companies involved again?
Yeah, you know what? That's exactly what's on my mind as well. The big corporations, a lot of them actually use the well-known open source software, but they don't make a big fuss about it. Somehow they seem to be quieter than even the smaller companies. I'm not sure if that's done on purpose because of they don't want the competitors or people to know what's inside their product or something like that. But even that, there should be some ways for them to contribute. I did have a look online the ways for people the big companies to contribute. There are quite a few different ways. Some of the big companies they do have a separate open source department or something
Hmm.
in charge of that. But that thing is something I find quite abnormal, if you like.
Mhm.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like this. Certainly, they wouldn't. Well, having benefited so much, they shouldn't mind contributing financially back to the open source. And I especially find that they don't tend to send people to the conferences and activities either.
All
Yeah,
right,
there
yeah,
might,
that's an easy way to contribute. Like, just
yeah,
send 5 people to the conference. You probably almost sponsor the project already in most cases. You're right.
yes, yes, definitely. Yeah,
That's
so
a,
if
that's
when I have a chance one day, I'll try to find out why that's happening and whether there's a way we can change that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's, and I think that is going to never be an even bigger issue as we go forward, because honestly, with the the hiring freezes that are going on, a little bit of contraction in the market, people will have even less time for unpaid work, and that will probably result in even less contributions to let's say known super core projects. I think Kamailio is safe. First, which is safe because it's now sponsored by Signalwire. Kamailio is safe because Daniel's great and he has his own sponsors going on. But there are a couple other platforms that I don't know, like in a known voice over IP space, there at least one, which is Nginx, the web server, which is
Okay.
always being concerning to me because it's run by 3 people and it powers about 40% of an internet,
Not.
and
Yeah.
someone else will pick it up, but still, it's weird. So yeah, it's definitely a concern at this moment. So one, since you have a strong background in engineering and academy, and not everyone has one in the space, let me jump topics. If you were someone who's interested in learning the same things that you learn to do, and they're just out of high school, what will you say they should do? How we get started
Interesting.
is a segment we often do here. Like, how do I become like Yufei Tao?
I'm not sure even that's a good idea.
Well,
They
from
should
neither me.
find a better ideas. Well, but from my experiences, I guess I just followed the flow. I didn't try particularly hard to push one direction or the other. It's just what came in my way, and then I just followed it. But I think looking back, the past experiences with my PhD, that was like a method training, how you
Mm,
handle problems, discipline. And that was basically very good, actually. It's very, I wouldn't say essential, but it does help a lot. For example, my PhD supervisor, he was really good. He was pointing out to me one day, he was saying, oh, I find a problem that you like to open up a lot of boxes without closing the lid. I was thinking, oh, actually, yes, I find something exciting, I jump onto it. And then I leave something behind. And then I find another thing, I jump onto it again. So basically, I didn't close anything. I think that's a really good point. I didn't realize. And then sometimes, well, it's exciting to jump onto new things all the time. I still find people around me, a lot of them do that as well. But the
mm.
thing is, you have to finish something, close the lid, and then maybe not one by one, but you do remember to close the lid. That's something done.
Yeah,
um,
that's a very good. Those are actually two very good points I'm seeing here. As you know, in programming, we have a lot of people who learn by themselves or went through various types of code boot camps or read books, etc. And they're great programmers, but nobody showed them how to solve problems, which is the most important part. Code eventually, you can either write or find someone who can write it for you once you exactly know what you need. Well, problem solving is a problem, and also finishing things is another. And
yeah,
that's something that has been a problem in some areas I follow more closely, just as web development. In the JavaScript world, there's a new front end framework every 3 months, and people
yes,
just jump to that, and it's hard to find an expert because 3 months are nowhere near a possibility. I mean, you can just not learn in that time. That also leads to some very fun situations, like when you see a job advert that asks for 4 years experience in a framework that is only 2 years old, because the recruiter
yes,
doesn't know. The recruiter doesn't
yeah.
know, and they just say, "Well, 4 years experience is standard." And then you always get the founder of the framework posting on Twitter that they themselves will not be hired by that company because they only have 2 years of experience, because that's how long the framework has been in
Right.
existence. It's like asking for 30 years of experience in Kamailio. It's just not there. Kamailio was started in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. It's
Oh,
almost 20 years though.
yeah. I've been in Kamailio world for the world of Kamailio to
Mhm.
yeah, about 15 years. So it's quite early start actually for me.
Yeah, the have you ever been to the Camellia World Conference?
I have been to, yeah, I've been to 2019 and 17. And on 19, I was presenting, and the previous one I was just watching what's happening, what's going on. And then on 19, I was presenting, and then the following 2 years it was online because of the pandemic. And then I gave presentations 3 times. Just my experiences to share people.
Well,
Yeah, I think
maybe
some of
this year you can join us in ClueCon if you like in Chicago. It's always interesting and with welcome papers. So if you'd like to send in a paper with the people looking at it, will be happy to receive it. But I mean, we'll talk about this later. One
yeah.
thing I wanted to ask you: I don't often have people on the call who have patents. So, what are your patents? I'm just curious what they are because it's something. It's another thing that I find it's overlooked. Many people in our industry have patentable knowledge, and they don't go through with actually doing the process of patenting it, resulting in some weird situations where you cannot even claim something is yours. Well, it's clearly something you made. So I'm just curious what's your main field and what your patents are.
Yeah. So one of the I have two, and then one is almost entirely my idea. That was like DTMF bleed removal. That's
Wow.
been patented in the UK, EU, Australia, USA, quite a lot of and the world patents, a lot of places because it does solve the problems we had. And the the thing about that patent is funny. It's so dead simple, but nobody thought about it. So I was when people were talking about we're going to file the patent of this, I was thinking, oh, it's embarrassing. I wish it was more complex.
Well, think about the wheel, one of the
Yes.
first inventions ever. It's super simple, but there was a point where we didn't know about the wheel. Then someone thought you could make a wheel, and now we have one. So it's not, yeah, the simple doesn't mean easy, right? It's simple
Yeah,
means
I
it's an
guess.
elegant
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah,
So,
before that, I had this idea. People were trying to remove the bleeds using the conventional way, which is in the frequency domain. Of course, you check the DTMF two frequencies, and then okay, we have a DTMF, and then it's short, it's a bleed. We need to remove it. So you have to do the frequency analysis. But when it's really narrow, you have problem because the energy is not high enough for it to detect. So that's why they just go through without being removed. So that's leaking your card data or whatever. And then I was watching this thing. Some people were sitting on it for a few years, but they just go in circles, tweaking different parameters, and then it still didn't didn't work. And then what I did was, well, if you look at the bleeds, they look different from your normal speech or
mm,
whatever normal audio signal. Why? Because they are spikes. So what I propose is just to remove spikes. I don't even check whether they are DTMFs. It's that simple. And then in the code is about uh, 30 lines ish, including the comments. It's super simple. Yeah.
yeah, that's very cool. The idea is, so for people who don't know, the TMF bleed happens when you are interacting with an IVR and there's someone else on the call, right? And you are entering some data, and you don't want the TMF to be heard in a recording or in a different audio area than what you were in, etc. So removing those is important
Yeah.
because yeah, you can tell the credit card number from the sounds
Yes,
whether or not you
definitely.
bleed it.
That's killing you. It's leaking the data.
And what about
Yeah.
the other patent you have?
The other one was it's not my idea, but I was the main person to implement. That was actually trying to send information, encoded information in the audio channel. That involved some communication theory is quite involved. So we had some other people, other person doing that as well. And then we did successfully demoed. It did work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
so basic, yeah,
the
that's communications. But the previous was basically like audio signal processing. I think my postdoc research in acoustics and audio processing probably gave me the hint.
Yeah, so acoustics and quality in general are always always an interesting discussion too, because we need to use 8 kHz for most part because of PSTN and whatnot, but quality really suffers. It's hard to figure out how to make it better. Do you think that's going to improve anytime soon? We no longer need to use 8 kHz technically. It's just that we settled that standard.
What is that? Sorry, can you repeat that?
So PSTN quality isn't great, right? The normal phone
Yes.
call quality isn't great. You think that's going to improve soon in any way? Because frankly, we don't need to have that kind of quality anymore, right? It could be better.
Yeah, I'm thinking the PSTN calls, they are dying out, right? Soon. They should. They should, hopefully. Yeah, so if we use the the internet, and then which is 4G, 5G, like this, we basically use the internet bandwidth to send your voice or image data. I hope that will replace all the PSTN soon, because the quality is really bad. Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
it
had a
is.
really bad experience recently. You just metallic, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, compression and whatnot. It's always necessary to. I mean, it used to be needed because PSTN was running on copper, right? Copper wires, but now none of that actually exists now. So you don't really care. It's super. It's not needed anymore. So yeah, let's hope it goes away and replaced by mobile, especially with OTT, LTE, and all the various database, the voice over IP based phone calls is going to be much better. Well,
Yeah.
that's super interesting. So what? Is there anything else in particular you'd like to let us know about your patents, about your work? Any platforms you'd like to recommend if people are starting out? Anything you'd like to add?
Um, I think one thing I need to keep thinking about and then trying to find a solution is the open source. How you get people to actively
Mm.
contribute, either is in code or in financially. Yeah, that's some area I think need many people's effort. Yeah, but I need to try my part to bring this into attention. And then where I work, I yeah, I already my company already contributed financially to the open source we use, and then I need to keep an eye on this. And then if I have more opportunity to do that, I will encourage companies to do that.
Yeah, that's very important. We probably as a community need to figure out a way to get more people involved because otherwise projects would just stagnate and become, any project I know that's run by a few people is, it's just run by those people. So the ideas are just theirs and they're always great, but sometimes an extra contribution will be great to move in a different direction, and it's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I think if big companies can provide like financially, or they can provide like hosting in the cloud for testing or whatever, that would be really, really good. Yeah, there are many ways they could consider joining. And I think also on the open source community side, how do we make it more aware, people more aware of this, and then make it more easy for them to do it when they have just an idea saying, I want to contribute. But if it's too much trouble, then they might forget about it.
Yeah, there's we need to be aware of that. Plus some companies, I mean, sometimes I just say that very large companies that we know are using certain open source packages, sometimes all they should do is just let us mention them. Like if uh, some of them are so big that but if you say, well, a certain large e-commerce company is using your software, they will just sue you. Even if it's
Oh,
100% true, it's known, they will sue you because you used their name. And it's often enough to say it in a conference, which is super weird. Like one thing is having, I don't know, printed materials, having it on your website. But if you're doing a talk and you say, well, one of the companies that uses this is a certain large e-commerce company, they will just sue you. So that's, I mean, at least that acknowledge the usage will be the minimum. Like, you don't want to contribute, you don't want to give money, you don't want to give back patches. At least let me say that you're using it. It will help me.
Mm.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then they say it's a security issue because you disclosed something from their architecture, which frankly is not very smart. Because honestly, if I know and I know nothing, everybody else knows, right? It's like it's not a secret. Well, Yufei, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great chat. We went through a lot of interesting things, especially on the open source side of things. And well, we have our conference in October in Chicago that's called ClueCon, and it's
Yep.
going to be from October 21st to 25th. And well, there's a website, it's called cluecon.com. Go take a look. If you'd like to send in a paper for a talk, there's time, I think, until the end of the month. So everybody who would like to join us, just let us know. And it's a great conference. It's we have a lot of interesting things going on. It's not the usual very vertical thing. We have a lot of different speakers from different areas. So take a look, see if you like it.
All right. Thank you. I will.
And Yufei, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, it was a pleasure having you here, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
And for everybody else, I'll see you next week. Have a good day. Bye bye.